Hey guys, I got a brand new video for you today, and today we're looking at the Fuji XF 50-140 2.8. And I'm sorry it took me so long to review this. I've had it like 9 months now, and a lot of you have been asking for this review, probably because it's the only 70-200 equivalent lens that you can get for Fuji without adapting glass and running into issues where you can't really control autofocus the same way. So basically it's a 75-210 millimeter equivalent in a full frame world. It's f2.8 through the entire zoom range, and you can stop it down to f22. It has 23 elements in 16 groups. It has 5 ED elements and 1 super ED element, which is basically just for correcting chromatic aberration. It has nano GI coating for stopping ghosting and flaring. And this lens has a little different focus motor and has a triple linear focus motor in it, which is actually really fast and super quiet. It has optical image stabilization, basically on and off. It's weather sealed and has a 7-bladed aperture. So talking about build quality, this lens is basically entirely metal. It has a rubber zoom ring here, which is pretty big. Obviously they expect you to mainly be zooming with this thing because the focus ring is a lot smaller. It's actually made out of metal and it's really dampened, like it's really tight. And I found this lens kind of hard to focus manually. I feel like the focus throw turns and turns and turns to get it to where you want it to go, but it does feel nice and solid. The lens is weather sealed, like I mentioned. The back seal has a gasket on it, and it's just fit and finish is nice and tight. It's made in Japan. The filter thread, if you want to know, is 72 millimeters. I'd say about the weight and size is quite a bit less than like a Canon 70-200 2.8 image stabilized. It's more similar to like the 70-200 f4 from Canon. And lastly, you can remove the tripod collar by taking these 2 screws out, and you can also slip the collar too by loosening this up, and then you can turn it. The zoom ring is all internal. It's nice and smooth. It feels really good. There's some weird quirks with zooming it in video. I'll talk about those later. Anyway, that's basically the build quality. I've had this thing, like I said, for about 9 months. I've done portrait shoots, I've done engagement shoots, I've done events, I've done quite a bit of stuff with it. I haven't done a wedding with it yet just because of the timing, but I have a wedding coming up in 3 weeks. Probably by the time I get this edited and released, I'll probably would have had this wedding shot, or at least within days of having it shot. I might talk about my experience with it later, but if you're a wedding shooter and you started using Fuji, this is basically your only choice for a 70-200. There's obviously the 100-400, and I think there's a 50-230 or something like that, or a 55 to, I can't remember. There's a couple other zoom lenses, but this is the only f2.8 version, and this is more like for pros and stuff like that that need this in their bag along with a 16-55. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up, take a look at some of my image samples, and I'll come back to you later. Anyways, you can tell this lens is really sharp. It takes amazing images. I didn't expect it to be as good for portraits as I thought it was going to be. I was in Miami back in February shooting a music video, and I decided I want to do some photo shoots while I was there, because why not? But I decided to force myself to use this lens the entire time while I was there pretty much, and you know, it performed really well. Anyway, let's take a look at the sharpness test. I'm going to take a picture of a brick wall like I do with all my lens tests, just so you can see corner sharpness and center sharpness. Okay, so starting out at 50 millimeters, zooming into the center at f2.8, it's pretty sharp in the dead center. Going to the top left, it's actually still pretty sharp with a little bit of vignetting. Switching to f4, zooming into the center at 300%, it's really sharp. And the top corner is really sharp as well with less vignetting. At f6.4, nice and sharp in the center. And zooming up to the top left corner, really sharp in the top corner. Then at f11, zooming into 300%, I noticed it started to soften up a bit. I'm not quite sure why, and then obviously the top corner is even softer. And usually diffraction sets in a little bit later, but here's f22, and obviously diffraction is set in. It's really soft in the center, and really soft in the top corner. Now switching over to 150 millimeters in the dead center, zooming into 300%, nice and sharp. Top corner sharp with some vignetting. f4. Very sharp in the dead center. Top left corner nice and sharp. Still some vignetting though. f6.4. dead center, nice and sharp. And in the top left corner, it's sharp with a slight vignetting still. Now at f11, starting to soften up, just like we saw at 50 millimeters. Top corner is about the same. And at f22, it's pretty soft. Diffraction's definitely set in by then. All right, so now I've talked about the build quality. We've seen some image samples with this lens, and I want to talk about the weird quirks, so let's go to the computer and check out that. All right, so another one on the computer. There's a couple image quirks that I want to talk about. I just grabbed a couple images that I found that kind of show this, and I shoot the Santa Claus Parade for Toronto every year, and these are just some images that I noticed using this lens, and then I did a portrait as well. So I'm just going to click right in here and show you what I'm talking about. So this image looks amazing. These are actually the raw files. As you can see down here, they're the RAW files. I just want to make sure they were raw so you could tell that they weren't processed in JPEG with this issue. I don't know if it's an issue, it's just kind of a weird thing. Anyway, if you zoom in here, and we get close to the edge, you can see around the outer edges between where the subject is in focus and is out of focus, that it has this kind of like cartoony dark outline. And I don't know if that's just Lightroom processing these files or something, but I've noticed this on anywhere where there's like a hard contrast, like a bright color to a dark color. You can see that there's kind of this like dark edging along here, and the fall off isn't like smooth, it's kind of like hard like that, like sharp. And it's kind of interesting, something I just noticed on this image. The same thing can be found in these images here. Again, like it's really obvious, it's like a cartoony dark outline. You just kind of see it along this here. Anywhere there's kind of like a contrast where it's like a bright to dark. Could be a Lightroom thing, but I definitely notice it in this. And here's another one. I just kind of chose these because they were pretty obvious. Well, this is really obvious right here. Look at this. It's like a cartoon edge. And yeah, I've never really seen anybody talk about this. I mean, the images look amazing zoomed out. Like they're nice and sharp. You get that pop. And here's a portrait shot that I took. I already showed this in my image samples, but if we zoom in here close, you see this dark line around the arm here? It's really interesting that it does that, but it really does make your subject pop. And it's something I thought I would talk about because I haven't really seen anyone mention this in any review before. Alright, so I decided to import them into Capture One just in case you guys are like, oh man, Lightroom sucks, use something else. Well, in Capture One, I'm getting the exact same issue. You get these dark lines. I don't even need to show all the images. It's pretty obvious that this is what we're getting here, even with Capture One. See the outline here. So basically my final thoughts, the lens is really sharp. It's got a nice look to it. I don't know if I love it as much as something like the Canon 70-200 2.8. I kind of like the fall off a little bit better on that lens versus that kind of weird cartoony edging that this does. It does really make your subject pop, which is pretty cool. I still don't know why it does that. I've tried another copy, it does the exact same thing. I've heard no one talk about this in reviews, so you know, maybe I'm the first, I don't know. It's definitely coming in through the RAW files and not just the JPEGs. It focuses really fast, it's really sharp wide open at 2.8. Now I want to show you guys the sound of the focus motor and the speed at which the autofocus is in a control environment, and we'll take a look at that now. So here I just wanted to show some autofocus in video using the center point, and you can kind of see how it's got this sharp, quick jump when it focuses. It's not really smooth, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I don't like using autofocus in video on this camera. Another thing I found out that was kind of weird, got some kind of like weird parfocal thing going on, where you can actually focus on a subject far away and zoom in on it and zoom back out, and it keeps it in focus, because this was all manual focus. But it's got kind of a weird jerkiness to it. It's kind of odd. Then I noticed this in a music video I was shooting, doing some quick zooms. Kind of has like a weird warp effect. It's not really all that smooth. And also, I just wanted to show image stabilization in video. It's kind of like a weird, jerky, linear feeling. I don't really think it's that great. Alright, so that's basically my review on this thing. Just to wrap up, if you're going to use this for portraits, it's pretty good. I would still rather choose something like the 56 1.2 or the 90 f2 or the future to come 80mm macro that's coming. I just find this lens to be a little heavy. It's not too bad when you mount it on the X Pro 2 with the grip. It bounces a little bit better, but it's still heavier than, say, like the 56mm f1.2 for doing portraits. Anyway, if you want to pick up this lens, I'll put a link in the description where to get one. And yeah, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, give it a thumbs down twice. And I'll see you in the next one.